Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge of the UNS Endurance was a cocoon of steel and screens, lit by the cold blue glow of holographic displays. Outside the viewport, the void stretched infinite, punctuated only by the faint twinkle of stars and the looming silhouette of the alien delegation's vessel, a massive iridescent orb that dwarfed their own frigate. Beside her, Lieutenant Marcus Hale leaned over the navigation console, his fingers dancing across the controls with the precision of a surgeon. Marcus was the steady one, always calculating odds before speaking, his dark eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses that seemed out of place in zero-G. "They're hailing us again, Captain. Third time in an hour." Elena nodded, her jaw set. She was the fire to his ice, brave to a fault, the kind who charged into unknowns with a grin. But today that grin felt forced. The Galactic Concordance had summoned humanity's representatives for compliance negotiations, a polite term for surrender. Earth's fledgling colony ships had pushed too far into contested space, and now the Xeno empires wanted tribute, tech, and obedience. "Put them on," she said, straightening her uniform. The air recyclers whispered softly, carrying the faint scent of recycled coffee from the crew mess. The main screen flickered, resolving into the image of Ambassador Lyervek, a towering Krellian with scales like polished obsidian and eyes that swirled with inner storms. Flanking him were two aides, a diminutive insectoid from the Hive Collective, its mandibles clicking idly, and an ethereal Vesperi, all flowing robes and bioluminescent veins. "Human Captain Vasquez," Lyervek intoned, his voice a resonant bass that made the speakers thrum. "The Concordance reiterates, your species must withdraw from Sector 7 Gamma and submit to oversight. Refusal invites consequences." Elena's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone even. "Ambassador, we've charted those routes fair and square. Humanity's not in the habit of rolling over for threats." Marcus shot her a sidelong glance, his brow furrowing. He mouthed careful, but she ignored it. The bridge crew, Engineer Kira Voss at the auxiliary station and comm specialist Tomas Reed, watched in tense silence. Kira, wiry and quick-witted, fiddled with a diagnostic tool, her optimism a shield against the unknown. Tomas, ever the cautious type, monitored the channels for any signs of escalation. Lyervek's scales rippled in what Elena guessed was irritation. "Your ingenuity is noted, but the stars are not yours to claim. Comply or face isolation. No trade, no alliances. Your worlds will wither." The transmission cut, leaving the bridge in heavy quiet. Elena rose, pacing to the viewport. The alien ship hung there, a silent monolith, its docking clamps extended like waiting jaws. "They're bluffing," she said finally, more to herself than the crew. "Push too hard and we show them what humans are made of." Marcus stood, crossing his arms. "With respect, Captain, our sensors show their shields are triple ours. And that isolation? It's a blockade waiting to happen. We need a plan, not bravado." Kira piped up from her station, her voice bright despite the tension. "What if we don't dock? Slip the net, head for the nebula fringe. I've got mods on the engines that could give us an edge, human engineering, right?" Tomas shook his head, his fingers hovering over the comms panel. "And alert every patrol in the sector? We're one ship against the Concordance." Elena turned, her eyes meeting each of theirs. The weight of it settled in, Earth's hopes pinned on this ragtag crew, on a vessel built from scraps and stubborn will. "We dock," she decided. "But on our terms. Marcus, plot an evasion vector just in case. Kira, prep those engines. Tomas, jam any outgoing signals from their side if things go south." As the crew sprang into action, the Endurance's thrusters fired gently, aligning with the alien orb. The docking lights blinked on, a fragile bridge between worlds. Elena watched the approach, the stars blurring into streaks. Compliance or defiance? The choice burned in her chest, a spark ready to ignite. But as the clamps engaged with a metallic thud, a proximity alert blared. Marcus's console lit up red. "Captain, incoming transmission." "Not from them. It's automated. From the core worlds." Elena's hand tightened on the rail. The screen filled with static, then resolved into a concordance edict. All non-compliant vessels to be neutralized. Effective immediately. The bridge erupted in alarms. Lyervek's ship powered up its weapons arrays, the orb's surface glowing with lethal energy. Elena's mind raced. Talks were over. Survival began now. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair. The hum of the bridge's consoles a faint vibration under her boots. The view screen flickered with static-laced feeds from the outer sensors, showing the debris field stretching like a graveyard beyond the hull. Her crew, small, tight-knit, the kind that had survived 3 system jumps together, waited for her word. Lieutenant Kai Ren, ever the cautious one, tapped queries into his station, his fingers precise despite the tension etching lines around his eyes. Beside him, Engineer Mira Solis leaned forward, her witty retort dying on her lips as another alert pinged. "Captain," Kai said, voice steady but edged with urgency, "the compliance beacon's signature is amplifying. It's not just a signal, it's pulling at our NAV systems. If we don't disengage, we'll be locked in orbit around that thing." Elara nodded, her jaw set. Humanity hadn't bent to the Galactic Concorde's demands for harmonized navigation protocols, and now here they were, the first to test the consequences. The Concorde's enforcers had warned of automated sentinels in disputed sectors, but this? A pulsing artifact in the heart of the nebula, disguised as a derelict station, broadcasting edicts of surrender. Refusal meant isolation or worse, erasure from the stars. Mira snorted softly, breaking the silence. Pulling? More like throwing a tantrum. I've seen glitchier code in a cadet's first sim. She rerouted power with a few deft swipes, but the ship's frame groaned in protest, lights dimming for a heartbeat. Options? Elara asked, eyes on the screen where the artifact loomed, its surface etched with unfamiliar glyphs that seemed to shift like living ink. Kai glanced up. We could vent plasma from the forward arrays, disrupt the field temporarily. But it'll fry our shields, leave us blind for minutes. Or, Mira interjected, her optimism a spark in the dim bridge, we improvise. I've got a jury rig in the engine bay. Overload a probe with our old EarthTech modulator, make it mimic a compliance echo. Buy us time to slip the net. Elara waited, the weight of command pressing like the nebulous fog against the viewport. The crew's eyes on her, trusting the grit that had gotten them this far. Do it. Kai prepped the vent as backup. We're not complying today. As Mira dashed to the access hatch, tools clinking at her belt, the artifact's pull intensified. Alarms wailed and the ship shuddered, consoles sparking. Kai's hands flew over controls, stabilizing what he could, while Elara stood, bracing against the tilt. Outside, the debris field churned, fragments of forgotten vessels glinting like accusations. Myra's voice crackled over comms from below decks. Modulators hot, launching in 10. Hold her steady, folks. The deck lurched again, harder this time, and Elara caught Kai's arm as he stumbled. We've got this, she said, more to herself than him. But the artifact's glyphs pulsed brighter, as if sensing their defiance, and a low rumble built in the hull, like the heavens themselves holding breath. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Defiant's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static, the alien fleet's blockade a shimmering wall of iridescent hulls against the starfield. Her crew, small, ragged, but unbreakable, huddled around the tactical console. There was Jax, the wiry engineer whose hands never stopped twitching with half-formed fixes. Mira, the sharp-eyed navigator who could plot a course through a nebula blindfolded. And Tomas, the comms officer, his face pale but set, fingers dancing over keys that refused to connect. They're tightening the net, Mira said, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. She tapped the holographic display, and red lines snaked inward, encircling their position like a noose. The Kalar Dominion ships moved with eerie precision, their energy webs pulsing in sync, designed to ensnare non-compliant vessels. Humanity's refusal to join their hive mind collective had marked them as anomalies, threats to be neutralized. Elara's orders from Earth Command were clear. Evade, observe, report. But evasion was running out of options. Jax leaned over a sparking panel, rerouting power from life support to shields. If we push the engines another notch, we might slip through that gap on the port side. But it'll fry the coils. We're talking weeks in dry dock if we even make it back. His eyes met Alara's, a silent question hanging between them. She nodded once, the weight of the choice settling in her gut. The air recyclers whirred slower already, a faint metallic tang creeping in. Tomas broke the silence. Incoming transmission. It's them again. The speakers crackled to life, the Kaler's synthetic voice droning in translated English, flat and insistent. Vessel Defiant, you will power down and submit to integration. Resistance accelerates your obsolescence. Alara's jaw tightened. Obsolescence. That's what they called it when a species dared to think for itself. Respond with the standard refusal, she said, her tone clipped. Tomas keyed it in. Humanity stands independent. We comply with no one. The transmission looped back almost instantly, the Kaler's reply laced with a simulated impatience that almost sounded human. Your isolation ends now. Prepare for boarding. Alarms blared as the nearest Kaler frigate unleashed a barrage of containment drones. They swarmed like metallic locusts, latching onto the Defiant's hull with magnetic clamps. Alara surged to her feet. Jax countermeasures. Mira, evasive pattern Delta 7. The ship groaned under the strain, inertial dampeners lagging as Mira threw them into a spiraling dodge. Sparks flew from consoles and Jax cursed, slamming a fist into a jammed relay. Got it, EMP burst deploying. A blue wave rippled from the Defiant's underbelly, frying the nearest drones in a cascade of explosions. Debris pinged off the shields, but more were coming, the fleet adapting faster than any human AI could predict. Alara watched the display, her mind racing. The initial plan, slip the blockade and rendezvous with the resistance flotilla, had backfired when a sensor ghost led them into this trap. Now, with engines straining and oxygen ticking down, surrender wasn't an option. Not for her, not for the crew who'd followed her into this fight. Mira glanced up, her fingers pausing on the controls. Captain, if we vent the auxiliary bays, we could create a debris field to mask our signature. Buy us time to jump. It was risky. Venting meant losing tools, spares, even personal effects. Tomas shook his head. But the Kaler will trace it. They'll know we're desperate. Alara considered it, the image of Earth's blue marble flashing in her mind. Desperate? Maybe. But humans had built empires from less. Do it, she ordered. And Jax prepped the jury rig for the warp coil. We're not slipping away, we're breaking through. As the vents hissed open, spewing fabricated junk into the void, the Defiant shuddered forward. The Kaler ships hesitated, their formations fracturing as they scanned the expanding cloud. For a moment, silence reigned on the bridge, broken only by the creak of straining metal. Then Myra's voice cut through, gap opening, 3 minutes to clear. Alara allowed herself a thin smile. The heavens might applaud later, but right now, survival was the only rebellion that mattered. Yet in the back of her mind, the cost loomed. A ship pushed to breaking, a crew one mistake from the brink. The stars blurred as they accelerated, the blockade's glow fading behind. But the chase was far from over. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static-laced feeds from the outer sensors, showing the Armada's blockade tightening around Sol's Edge. Her crew, Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual grease streak on his cheek, Mira, the sharp-tongued navigator whose optimism bordered on defiance, and Dr. Hale, the cautious xenobiologist who preferred data to daring, huddled around the tactical console. They'd been at this for hours, ever since the alien envoy's ultimatum: submit to the Concordance's neural oversight or face isolation from the stars. They're probing our shields again, Mira said, her fingers dancing over the holographic display. A fresh ripple distorted the feed, like heat haze over a desert. Not aggressive but insistent. Like they're testing for cracks. Brave didn't mean reckless. She'd learned that hauling cargo through asteroid belts as a kid. Jax reinforced the emitters. We can't let them map our weak points. Jax wiped his hands on his jumpsuit, already moving. On it, Cap. But if they keep this up, we'll burn through the auxiliary power in a day. He vanished into the access hatch, tools clanging as he descended. The challenge wasn't just the blockade, it was the virus they'd slipped into the comms net during first contact. A subtle human hack, code woven from old Earth algorithms, designed to mimic compliance while siphoning data. It had worked at first, feeding the Concordance false telemetry of a yielding fleet. But now, alerts blinked red. The aliens were adapting, their AI countermeasures evolving faster than anticipated. Dr. Hale adjusted his glasses, peering at the waveform analysis. The virus is degrading. Their systems are isolating segments like antibodies fighting an infection. If it fully mutates, they'll trace it back to us, and that means war on their terms. Alara's mind raced. The stakes pressed in. Earth's colonies were fragile, their population still rebuilding after the warp drive breakthrough. Surrender meant mind leashes for every human mind, a harmony that erased free will. Resistance? It could doom them all to silence in the void. She remembered her father's stories of old rebellions, grit-forged triumphs that echoed in her blood. Options, she said flatly, eyes on the screen where enemy ships loomed like shadowed monoliths. Mira leaned in, her voice steady despite the tension etching lines around her eyes. We could overload the virus, make it a flare, blind their sensors temporarily. Buy time to slip a probe through the blockade. Hale shook his head. Too risky. It'll confirm hostility. We need subtlety. Jax's voice crackled over the intercom from below decks. Subtlety's overrated. I've got an idea. Reroute the shield harmonics through the engine vents. It'll create a feedback loop in their probes, like echoing their own signal back amplified. Might scramble their scans without firing a shot. Alara waited. Jax's plans often backfired spectacularly, but his ingenuity had saved them from pirate swarms twice. Do it. Mira, plot a vector for the probe. Hale, monitor for any biosigns in their response. We don't want surprises. The ship thrummed as Jax worked, a low growl building in the conduits. Minutes stretched, the air thick with recycled oxygen and unspoken doubts. Then, a sharp jolt rocked the bridge, alarms wailed. Feedback's hitting them, Jax reported, triumph laced with strain. But, damn, it's resonating with our own arrays. Shields dropping in Sector 3. On the view screen, the alien formation shifted, a trio of interceptors peeling off toward their position. The hack had worked too well, drawing attention instead of deflecting it. Alara's heart pounded, but she kept her voice level. Evasive maneuvers. Jax stabilized those shields, now. Mira punched in commands, the ship banking hard as laser fire streaked past, close enough to singe the hull plating. In that moment, camaraderie solidified. No speeches, just hands on controls, eyes locked in shared resolve. The probe launched silently into the chaos, a slim dart carrying their encrypted plea to the outer colonies: refuse compliance, rally the fleet. But as the interceptors closed, Alara knew the cost. One wrong move and the heavens' applause would turn to thunder. The virus's remnants flickered out, leaving them exposed, but the seed of defiance was sown. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the metallic tang of recycled air sharp in her nostrils. The bridge of the UNS Endurance hummed with the low vibration of failing engines, red emergency lights casting jagged shadows across the faces of her crew. Specialist Kai Ren, ever the cautious one, hunched over his console, fingers flying across the holographic display as he rerouted power from non-essential systems. Hull integrity at 60%, he reported, his voice steady but laced with the edge of exhaustion. That asteroid field is chewing us up like gravel in a blender. Lieutenant Mira Thorne paced behind them, her boots thudding softly against the grated floor. Witty under fire, she shot a glance at Alara. If we don't punch through soon, we'll be the galaxy's most expensive scrap art. Any bright ideas from our fearless leader? Her tone carried a spark of challenge, but her eyes betrayed the worry etching lines around them. The Endurance had been running for days, evading the compliance fleet's blockade after humanity's bold declaration. No surrender, no assimilation. The aliens, those towering sentinels of order from the core worlds, demanded uniformity across the stars. Earth had laughed in their face, or more precisely broadcast a defiant symphony of human music and memes that echoed through subspace. Elara leaned forward, studying the tactical overlay. The field ahead was a chaotic swirl of rocks the size of skyscrapers, tumbling in the gravitational pull of a rogue gas giant. Their initial plan, skirting the outer edge, had backfired spectacularly when a micrometeoroid storm shredded their auxiliary thrusters. Now the only way out was straight through, and the ship's inertial dampeners were flickering like a dying heartbeat. Kai, give me everything you've got on the forward shields. Mira, plot a slalom course, use the debris for cover if you have to. Kai nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he shunted energy from life support. The air grew cooler, vents hissing faintly. Shields reinforced, but it's like patching a sieve with tape. We hit one more big rock wrong and we're venting atmosphere. He didn't look up, but his hands trembled slightly, a rare crack in his unflappable demeanor. Myra's course materialized on the main viewer, a twisting red line weaving through the maelstrom. Locked in. Hold on to your seats, this is going to feel like a roller coaster designed by a drunk engineer. She strapped in, her quick grin flashing before the ship lurched forward. The Endurance surged into the field, the first impacts rattling the hull like thunderclaps. Elara felt the jolt through her bones, the chair's restraints biting into her shoulders. A boulder the shape of a warped fist glanced off the port side, sparks erupting in the void outside the viewport. Alarms blared, a cacophony that drowned out the crew's sharp intakes of breath. Evasive. Elara barked, her voice cutting through the din. Mira yanked the controls, the ship banking hard. Kai muttered calculations under his breath, adjusting shield harmonics on the fly. Incoming at 2 o'clock, big one. The rock loomed, a monolithic shadow blotting out the stars, its surface pitted and unforgiving. Mira fired lateral thrusters, the Endurance scraping past with a screech of stressed metal. Shards of ice and stone peppered the shields, each hit sending vibrations up Elara's spine. In the respite between collisions, Elara's mind raced. My people navigated these once, but your ship, it lacks the harmony. Her words carried no accusation, just fact, a remnant of the trust they'd built when she defected mid-battle, saving them from a coalition boarding party. Elara leaned forward, tracing a finger along the projected path. The plan was simple. Skim the nebula's edge, use its interference to mask their signature from patrols, then punch out to clear space. But the first leg had backfired spectacularly, a microburst had scrambled their shields, forcing an emergency dive that cost them precious fuel cells. Now, with the coalition's dreadnoughts likely closing in, hesitation meant capture. Options. Elara asked, her voice calm, masking the knot in her gut. Jax and Lyra were all she had left of the original crew, the others gone to skirmishes or worse. Their camaraderie was forged in fire, Jax's quick fixes, Lyra's alien insights, but it wouldn't mean a damn if they drifted dead in the void. Jax rubbed his chin, eyes darting. We could vent plasma to create a decoy burst, draw any tails away. Risky, might light us up like a beacon if it rebounds. Lyra's scales rippled, a sign of unease. Or reroute through the inner whirls. Slower, but the density might shield us. I can recalibrate the inertial dampeners to match the flow. Elara waited, the weight of command pressing like the nebula's gravity. Venting plasma was bold, human-style grit, but one wrong surge and they'd be vapor. Lyra's path played to her strengths, but trusting the Krellians' harmony over raw power? That grated even after months of shared bunks and rations. A proximity alert blared, red lights pulsing. On the view screen, a shadow coalesced. A coalition scout drone, sleek and predatory, emerging from the gas clouds like a shark scenting blood. Decoy it is, Elara snapped, adrenaline sharpening her focus. Jax, prep the vents. Lyra, sink the dampeners, make us ghosts in the storm. Jax grinned, all teeth and defiance, slamming commands into his panel. Cap. Let's give him a light show they'll regret. As the Defiant shuddered into motion, engines whining against the pull, Elara felt the familiar surge, not fear but the raw thrill of refusal. The heavens might applaud later, but right now, survival was the only ovation that mattered. The drone locked on, weapons priming, and the nebula roared to meet them. The dim glow of the auxiliary lights cast long shadows across the engineering bay, where Jax wiped sweat from his brow and stared at the flickering console. The hull breach alarm had finally silenced, but the patchwork seals they jury-rigged held only by the grace of scavenged polymers and sheer spite. "That's it," he muttered, slamming a panel shut. "She's breathing, but don't ask her to run a marathon." Elena paced behind him, her boots echoing against the grated floor, each step a deliberate anchor in the chaos. The alien fleet's latest transmission still buzzed in her earpiece, a cold, synthesized demand for surrender, laced with threats of orbital bombardment. Humanity's refusal had bought them time, but time was a currency they were rapidly spending. Mira hunched over a nearby workstation, her fingers dancing across holographic displays, cross-referencing the incoming sensor data with the colony's dwindling power grid. "We can't hold them off forever," Mira said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She glanced up, eyes sharp behind her visor. "Their weapons array is charging again. If we don't disrupt that relay satellite, the next strike will vaporize the outer habitats." Jax snorted, leaning against the bulkhead with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Disrupted how? Our shuttle's thrusters are shot, and the last probe we sent got turned into confetti. Unless you've got a miracle in that brain of yours document." Elena's pacing stopped. She turned to face them, the weight of command settling like an old friend on her shoulders. "We do have one. The mining drone from Sector 4, it's got enough payload left for a makeshift EMP burst. Jax, can you mod its guidance system to lock onto the satellite's frequency?" He pushed off the wall, already pulling up schematics on his wrist pad. "EMP? From a rock hauler? That's like arming a slingshot with a nuke. Risky, but yeah, give me 20 minutes and whatever's left in the scrap bin." Mira shook her head, but there was a spark of reluctant approval in her expression. "It might work, but the drone's range is limited. We'll have to launch it from the forward airlock, expose ourselves to their scans. And if it misses..." She trailed off, the unspoken cost hanging in the recycled air. Lives, the last fragile threads of the colony. Elena nodded, her decision crystallizing. "Then we make it count. Mira, plot the trajectory. Jax, get that drone singing. I'll handle the bridge, keep the fleet guessing." She clapped Jax on the shoulder, a brief touch that spoke of trust forged in fire, then strode out, leaving the bay humming with purpose. As Jax dove into the wiring, sparks flying like defiant stars, Mira fed coordinates into the system. The plan was audacious, born of desperation and human stubbornness, but in the face of the void's unyielding stars, it felt like the only path forward. Outside, the alien ships loomed, silent sentinels of compliance, oblivious yet to the grit uncoiling below. Elena gripped the console's edge, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The bridge hummed with the low growl of failing systems, red lights flickering like dying embers across the panels. Jax was already under the access hatch, his toolkit clanging against the deck as he wrestled with the auxiliary power relays. "Come on, you stubborn beast," he muttered, voice echoing up through the grate. Sweat beaded on his forehead, mixing with the grime from hours of jury-rigging. Mira hovered nearby, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes darting between readouts. "The flux capacitor's integrity is down to 23%. If we push the engines now, we'll tear a hole straight through the hull." Her words came out clipped, cautious as always, but there was an edge to them, a crack in her usual composure. The alien fleet loomed on the view screen, their sleek vessels forming a tightening noose around the battered human frigate. No transmissions, no demands this time. Just the silent promise of annihilation if humanity's defiance didn't yield. "Integrity be damned," Elena snapped, her voice cutting through the din. She straightened, brave resolve hardening her features. "We've come too far to fold now. Jax, talk to me, can we reroute the core output to the shields?" Her plan from the last jump had bought them time, a desperate slingshot around the nebula that scattered the pursuers. But the strain had cracked something deep in the ship's heart, and now the aliens were closing in, their weapons charging with an ominous blue glow. Jax's head popped up from the hatch, his face smeared with lubricant, a wry grin flashing despite the chaos. "Reroute? Captain, that's like hot wiring a star with a paperclip. But yeah, give me 2 minutes. Mira, hand me that plasma coil, the blue one, not your lucky charm. He winked, diffusing the tension just enough to keep them moving. Mira hesitated, then passed it down, her fingers brushing his. In that brief touch, Elena saw the unspoken worry. They were running on fumes, literally. The resource shortage had hit hard after the nebula dodge, fuel cells depleted, air recyclers straining. One wrong move and they'd be adrift, gasping in the void. The view screen updated with a ping, showing the lead alien ship firing a probing shot. It glanced off their weakened shields, but the impact rattled the deck, sending tools skittering. Elena's heart pounded, but she forced steadiness into her commands. Evasive pattern Delta, now. The ship lurched, thrusters firing in uneven bursts as the AI struggled to compensate. They weaved through the debris field they'd hoped would provide cover, chunks of asteroid tumbling lazily in the starlight. Down in engineering, Jack sealed the relay with a satisfying click. Power surged, lights brightening for a fleeting moment. Shields at 40%, hold on to your seats. He scrambled out, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. But as the energy flowed, Myra's tablet beeped urgently. Wait, overloading detected. The reroute's feedback loop is destabilizing the warp coil. Elena's eyes widened. The early plan to boost shields had backfired spectacularly, the influx of power creating a cascade failure. Sparks erupted from the console, acrid smoke filling the bridge. The ship shuddered violently, alarms screaming as the warp drive whined in protest. On the view screen, the aliens adjusted course, sensing weakness. Elena slammed the override, buying seconds, but the cost was clear. Their escape window was slamming shut. Options? She demanded, voice steady even as fear clawed at her gut. Jax leaned against the bulkhead, catching his breath, while Mira frantically typed. We vent the excess through the auxiliary vents, Mira said, her caution giving way to grit. It'll fry them, but we lose maneuvering for a bit. Do it, Elena ordered. As Mira initiated the purge, a brilliant flare erupted from the ship's side, blinding the sensors and forcing the nearest alien vessel to veer off. The bridge crew held their breath, the silence after the chaos deafening. But the view screen showed the fleet regrouping, undeterred. They'd bought time, but the lingering hum in the engines whispered of deeper damage, repairs that might never come in time. Jax clapped Mira on the shoulder, his wit surfacing again. Nice save, Doc. Next time, let's not turn the ship into a fireworks display. She managed a thin smile, but Elena saw the toll in their eyes. Exhaustion etched deep, the weight of defiance pressing harder. The stars stretched endless before them, but the aliens' shadows grew longer. The dim hum of the auxiliary engines vibrated through the deck plates, a constant reminder that the Endeavour was running on borrowed time. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. She'd always been the steady one, the anchor in storms that swallowed lesser ships whole. Now, with the alien fleet's blockade tightening like a noose around the outer colonies, steady felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Lieutenant Kai Ren, her wiry engineer with a perpetual smudge of grease on his cheek, hunched over the console, fingers flying across holographic displays. Power reroute complete, Cap. We're squeezing 112% out of the core, but it's like asking a marathon runner to sprint uphill with weights. She'll hold for now. His voice carried that wry edge, the kind that masked fear with facts. Kai had patched the Endeavour through asteroid fields and plasma storms. He knew when to joke and when to shut up. From the tactical station, Dr. Mira Solis shot him a glare, her dark eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. The xenobiologist was all precision and quiet intensity, her mind a map of alien physiologies and weaknesses. Focus, Ren. The Vexery probes are adapting faster than we anticipated. If they breach the hull integrity fields, we're not just leaking atmosphere, we're handing them our autopsy on a platter. She joined the crew after the first contact debacle, driven by a burning need to understand why the Vexery demanded total submission from humanity. No trade, no alliances, just compliance or extinction. Ilara nodded, scanning the viewport where the stars blurred into streaks against the warp field. The challenge wasn't just the blockade, it was the Vexery's neural dampeners, invisible waves that scrambled human tech and sowed doubt in minds. Already 2 scout ships had gone dark, crews lost to hallucinations of surrender. The cost was mounting. Families on the colonies waiting for relief that might never come, resources dwindling as the Endeavour dodged patrols. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7, Ilara ordered, her voice calm but laced with steel. The ship lurched as Ensign Tara Klein, the youngest at 23 and fiercely optimistic, executed the maneuver. Tara's hands danced over controls, her blonde ponytail swinging with each jolt. "Got it, Captain." Threading the needle through their sensor net. The plan had been simple at first. Slip past the blockade, deliver the prototype disruptor to the Resistance hub on Epsilon Eridani. Human ingenuity at its finest. A device born from scavenged Vexery tech, tuned to jam their dampeners and turn the tide. But simplicity shattered when their initial approach triggered a swarm of drones. The first backfire came hard. Kai's jury-rigged shield had held, but it overloaded the warp coils, stranding them in a debris field. Now tension coiled tighter. Alarms blared as a Vexery interceptor locked on, its sleek, obsidian form cutting through the void like a predator's shadow. "Incoming torpedoes," Mira called, her fingers tracing probability lines on her screen. 3, impact in 90 seconds. Kai swore under his breath, diving into the engineering subroutines. Rerouting auxiliary power to point defense. "Tara, give me a baheo ho shaking Lucy." The Endeavour spun, engines whining in protest. Ilara felt the G-forces press her into the seat, a stark image of the ship's underbelly scarred from the earlier skirmish flashing in her mind. They weren't built for this war. Freighters turned fighters, humans refusing to kneel. "Direct hit on the lead torpedo," Tara reported, triumph edging her voice. But the second grazed the hull, sparks erupting from a console. Mira ducked as shrapnel pinged off her station. "Not good," Kai muttered, smoke curling from his panel. "Hull breach in Bay 3. Sealing it now, but we're venting plasma." Ilara's mind raced. Surrender wasn't an option, not after the Vexery had glassed New Harmony, leaving craters where homes once stood. The stakes were etched in every face on her crew. Kai's sister among the colonists, Myra's research team vaporized, Tara's unyielding hope for a free tomorrow. They had to adapt. "Mira, talk to me about that disruptor variant you theorized," Ilara said, leaning forward. "The one using our neural patterns against theirs." Myra's eyes lit up, the cautious scientist yielding to the strategist. "It's risky. If we modulate the emitter to broadcast human defiance signatures, emotions like resolve, not fear, it could overload their dampeners from afar. But we'd need to vent the cargo bay, expose the device directly." Kai straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "That means dropping shields. In this soup? We're fish in a barrel." "Or bait," Ilara countered. Tara, plot a course to skim the debris cloud. Kai prepped the vent. Mira, calibrated for maximum psychological punch. Make them feel our grit. The crew moved as one, arguments dissolving into action. Tara's fingers blurred, Kai's tools clattered. Myra's voice murmured equations into the comm. The interceptor closed, its weapons glowing with ethereal energy. As the Endeavour dove into the cloud, rocks tumbling past like silent giants, Ilara watched the disruptor activate. A pulse rippled out, invisible but potent, carrying the unyielding spirit of humanity. The Vexery ship faltered, its formation breaking as crew aboard recoiled from the flood of alien will, stubborn, inventive, unbroken. The interceptor veered off, trailing sparks, but victory tasted bittersweet. Scans showed the warp coils at critical, a lingering consequence. Elena gripped the console edge as the ship's alarms blared, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat across the bridge. The alien fleet loomed on the view screen, their sleek vessels forming an impenetrable wall of iridescent hulls, blocking the jump lane to Sol. Jax hunched over his jury-rigged panel, sweat beading on his forehead, fingers flying across exposed wiring that sparked intermittently. "Come on, you stubborn beast," he muttered, his voice a low growl under the din. Mira stood behind him, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes darting between readouts that screamed failure. The initial hack had worked too well, too flashy, drawing the fleet's full attention like moths to a flare. Now their countermeasures were adapting, sealing off the backdoor Jax had pried open in the aliens' network. They're learning, Mira said, her tone clipped, cautious as ever. Our virus is mutating under their firewalls. If we push harder, we risk a full system cascade. Elena shot her a glance, the weight of command settling heavier with each passing second. The crew below decks was counting on this. One wrong move and the Defiant would be scrap, along with every soul aboard. Jax yanked a cable free, sparks dancing across his knuckles, but he didn't flinch. Learning? It means they're scared. He flashed a grin, wry and unyielding, the kind that had pulled them through the asteroid skirmish back on Europa. But this was different. No rocks to dodge, just a noose of superior tech tightening around their throats. Elena leaned in, her breath steady despite the knot in her gut. Options, people. We can't outgun them, and running's off the table. The aliens' demand for compliance echoed in her mind. Surrender humanity's independence, join their hive mind collective, or face extinction. Refusal had brought them here, to this knife edge. Mira tapped her screen, pulling up a holographic projection of the fleet's formation. A single gap flickered at the edge, narrow as a needle's eye, guarded by drone swarms. We repurposed the virus, she suggested, her voice gaining a rare edge of resolve. Turn it against their drones instead of the core network. Create a diversion. Jax snorted, splicing 2 circuits with a makeshift tool. Diversion? That's buying seconds, not victory. But hell, seconds are what we've got. He slammed a panel shut, and the console hummed back to life, albeit fitfully. Elena nodded, her decision crystallizing in the chaos. Do it. Jax, route power from life support if you have to, keep the engines hot for that gap. The ship groaned in protest as auxiliary systems dimmed, air recyclers whining down to whispers. Below, the crew would feel the chill creeping in, but they were humans, they'd endure. Jax's hands blurred, code streaming across his display in a cascade of green and red. The virus shifted, morphing into a swarm of digital locusts aimed at the drones. On the view screen, the first drones jerked erratically, their formations fracturing like shattered glass under a hammer blow. Explosions bloomed silent in the void, debris scattering like confetti from a grim party. It's working. Mira exclaimed, a flicker of triumph breaking her usual reserve. But the fleet reacted swiftly, one capital ship pivoted, unleashing a beam that lit the bridge in stark white. The Defiant shuddered, shields flaring as the shot grazed them, hull integrity dropping to 60%. Elena braced against the jolt, tasting blood from a bitten lip. Helm, angle us toward the gap, full burn. The ship lurched forward, engines roaring defiance. Jax hooped as more drones imploded, clearing a fragile path. Yet the cost mounted. Myra's scans showed the virus burning out, the aliens' adaptation closing in. We have maybe 30 seconds, she warned, her caution now a lifeline. Through the narrowing corridor of wreckage, stars streaked past, the jump point tantalizingly close. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears, every fiber urging her to push, to refuse the surrender that would doom her species to shadows. Jax patched in auxiliary thrusters, a clever bypass that shaved precious meters off their trajectory. Hang on, folks, this is gonna be bumpy. The fleet's fire intensified, lances of energy slicing the void, one clipping the Defiant's wing and sending them into a spin. Alarms wailed anew, but Elena's voice cut through, steady as bedrock. Steady as she goes. We're not done yet. In that moment, with the heavens themselves seeming to hold their breath, humanity's grit shone through the storm, unyielding, ingenious, alive. The dim glow of the emergency lights cast long shadows across the bridge of the UNS Endurance, where Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from fear but from the relentless heat seeping through the hull breaches. The alien armada's latest salvo had punched holes in their shields, and now the ship's life support was wheezing like an old man in a marathon. Status on the jury-rigged emitters? She barked, her voice steady despite the chaos. Lieutenant Marcus Hale, the wiry engineer with a perpetual grease smudge on his cheek, hunched over a flickering console, fingers flying across the keys. Holding at 30%, Cap. But if those Krell bastards fire again, we're vapor. His words were clipped, laced with the grim humor that had kept the crew sane through months of this siege. The Krell, those towering insectoid overlords who demanded humanity's surrender or extinction, had blockaded Sol for weeks, their compliance edict echoing across every channel, kneel or burn. Elena glanced at Dr. Sophia Reyes, the xenobiologist strapped into the navigator's seat, her dark eyes scanning the holographic display of the Armada's formation. Sophia's cautious nature had saved them more than once, spotting weaknesses in the Krell's rigid tactics where others saw only overwhelming force. "Their queen ship's powering up the singularity weapon," Sophia said, her tone measured, fingers tracing the energy signatures. "We have maybe 10 minutes before it tears us apart." The plan had been simple at the start. Slip through the blockade using the asteroid field's cover, deploy the prototype disruptor to scramble their hive mind comms. But the Krell had anticipated, their drones swarming like angry hornets, forcing the Endurance into a desperate evasion dance. Now, cornered near Jupiter's turbulent magnetosphere, the crew's ingenuity was all that stood between them and oblivion. Elena's mind raced. Brave didn't mean reckless, but surrender wasn't in the human lexicon. "Divert auxiliary power to the forward thrusters," Elena ordered, unstrapping herself to lean over Marcus's shoulder. The ship groaned in response, metal protesting as it pivoted sharply. A Krell fighter streaked past, its plasma bolt grazing the hull and sending sparks dancing across the deck. "Sophia, plot a course straight into the storm, use the radiation to mask our signature." Sophia hesitated, her brow furrowing. "That's suicide. The interference could fry our systems." But Elena's eyes met hers, fierce with that unyielding grit that had rallied the remnants of humanity's fleet. Sophia nodded, inputting the coordinates. Course laid in. "God help us." As the Endurance plunged into Jupiter's roiling bands of gas and lightning, the view screen filled with swirling crimson and gold, a maelstrom that swallowed stars. Alarms blared, radiation levels spiking, hull integrity dropping. Marcus cursed under his breath, patching leaks with makeshift seals from salvaged panels. "Emitters at 20%. We're blind in here, Cap." Elena's jaw tightened. The Krell wouldn't follow, their biology couldn't withstand the planet's fury. But neither could humans, not for long. She activated the comms, her voice broadcasting on an open frequency, laced with defiance. "This is Captain Vasquez of the UNS Endurance. You wanted compliance? Here's our answer, we're not your pets." Static crackled, but she knew the Queen's translators were listening. A sudden jolt rocked the ship, not enemy fire but the disruptor's core overheating. Marcus dove under the console, yanking wires with bare hands. "Got it? Rerouting now." The device hummed back to life, its pulse rippling outward, invisible tendrils seeking the Krell hive link. On the display the Armada faltered. Fighters veered erratically, the Queen's ship's lights flickering. Sophia's eyes widened. "It's working, their coordination's breaking. But the singularity's still charging." Elena straightened, a spark of triumph cutting through the tension. "Then we finish it. Marcus, full power to the disruptor. Sophia, get us out of this hell, aim for their weak flank." The crew moved as one, hands blurring over controls, banter forgotten in the raw pulse of survival. The Endurance surged forward, a battered arrow in the cosmic bow, humanity's refusal echoing through the void. Yet as they emerged from the storm, scarred but unbroken, Elena felt the weight of the cost. Sensors pinged. Half the Allied ships lost in the initial assault, families waiting back on Earth for news that might never come. The battle wasn't won yet, but in that moment, with the heavens themselves seeming to hold their breath, she knew they'd bought time, precious, hard-won time. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the helm of the Defiant, her knuckles white against the scarred controls. The bridge hummed with the low thrum of failing engines, emergency lights casting long shadows across the faces of her crew. Jax, the wiry engineer, wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers still black with grease from the jury-rigged repairs. Beside him Lena, the sharp-tongued navigator, punched coordinates into the flickering console, her eyes narrowed in fierce concentration. And there was Marcus, the quiet medic, bandaging a gash on his own arm while monitoring the vitals of the unconscious alien envoy strapped in the med bay, their unwilling key to survival. The Vexery fleet loomed on the view screen, a swarm of sleek, obsidian ships blotting out the stars. Their compliance demand had been clear: surrender the rogue human colony or face annihilation. But Ilara's people had refused, their broadcasts echoing defiance across the void. Now, with the Defiant as the last bastion, the stakes pressed like a vice. One wrong move and the heavens would claim them all. "Shields at 15%, Jax muttered, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. He slammed a panel shut, sparks flying like angry fireflies. "That plasma burst from their lead ship nearly cooked us." Ilara nodded, her jaw set. Brave didn't mean fearless, it meant pushing through the fear. "Lena, evasive pattern Delta. Buy us time." The navigator's fingers danced over the keys. "On it." "But they're adapting, those bastards learn fast." The ship lurched as she executed the maneuver, the Defiant twisting through a debris field like a needle in a storm. A Vexery cruiser grazed their flank, the impact shuddering through the hull. In the med bay, Marcus glanced up from his work. The Envoy stirred, its iridescent skin paling under the human lights. "It's coming around," he called over the comms. "If we don't get that neural link stable, it'll fry the whole system." Ilara's mind raced. Their plan had backfired earlier. Hacking the Vexery network to broadcast humanity's refusal had drawn the fleet straight to them. But in the chaos they'd captured this Envoy, a mid-level commander whose mind held the override codes. Clever adaptation was their only shot now. "Jax, reroute auxiliary power to the link interface," she ordered. "Lena, plot a course for the nebula, it'll mask our signature." As the ship plunged into the swirling gas clouds, colors bleeding across the view screen like a cosmic watercolor, Jax patched the connection. The Envoy's eyes snapped open, locking onto Ilara via the feed. "You, primitives, dare defy the Accord?" Her response was a grim smile. "We don't comply with extinction." She initiated the upload, the console beeping in protest. Tension coiled in the air, thick as the nebula outside. The Vexery ships hesitated, their formation fracturing as conflicting signals rippled through their hive mind. Jax hooped as the first cruiser powered down, its weapons going dark. "It's working. The codes are cascading." But the lead ship, the apex vessel, broke through, its beams slicing the clouds. Alarms wailed. Lena swore, yanking the ship into a barrel roll. "Incoming. We can't take another hit." Marcus burst onto the bridge, hypo in hand. "Sedatives ready. If we knock it out mid-transfer—" "No," Ilara cut in, her voice calm amid the storm. "We need it conscious for the full override." She turned to the feed. "Envoy, your fleet's turning on itself. Call them off or we all burn." The alien's form convulsed, telepathic feedback etching lines of pain across its features. For a moment, silence hung, broken only by the groan of straining bulkheads. Then, a whisper escaped: "Compliance, refused." The view screen erupted in chaos, Vexery ships colliding, engines flaring out as the override took hold. The apex vessel veered away, trailing plasma, its surrender broadcast across open channels. Ilara exhaled, slumping back as the Defiant emerged from the nebula, the fleet scattering like shattered glass. Jax clapped Lena on the shoulder. She managed a weary grin. Marcus checked the Envoy, now still, its vital signs stabilizing under restraint. They'd won, but the cost lingered. Scans showed the colony's outer defenses in ruins, lives lost in the initial assault. And the Vexery? Their empire would reel, but humanity's defiance had painted a target on every human world. As the stars wheeled back into view, Ilara set course for home. The heavens had applauded with silence now, but the real storm was just beginning. Grit and camaraderie had carried them this far. It would have to suffice for what came next.